In southern Nepal, Balmani observes the landscape from one of the windows of his orphanage when he is surprised by Mrs. Hannah, who asks him to join the rest of his classmates. So, the young boy goes outside, where he watches the children from the orphanage having fun on the soccer field. Around that region, wild animals live their lives peacefully, and run away scared when they hear a big tiger approaching. However, the predator does not care about this and remains beside his cub, who plays excitedly with his father. Far away, a tycoon named Samchai receives a call from Jenin, one of the orphanage employees, who reveals that he has found an adult tiger alongside a small cub. Upon receiving this news, the man is excited, because he knows that if the little tiger is a female, he can use it to reproduce, allowing him to obtain several predators under his power. The next day, Hannah rings the orphanage bell for all the children to come and eat their lunch, and later, while everyone is asleep, Balmani has a nightmare, reliving the moments when he lost his family in a tragic earthquake. At that moment, Hannah and Ida, who were talking at one of the tables, see the young man walking around the place due to his sleepwalking, and before they can stop him, he ends up falling to the floor. As a result, Balmani slightly injures his knee, and after taking care of the boy, Hannah says that they will always be there for him, like a real family. However, the boy does not believe this and says that his family is not there, as they are all gone. After the conversation, Balmani returns to the dormitory, and his depressed behavior leaves the women devastated. In the morning, Hannah continues teaching the orphans, and when Balmani hears her explaining about the monastery known as the Tiger's Nest, he becomes excited. Realizing that the subject has caught her students' attention, the teacher asks him to continue telling what he knows about the place, and eagerly, the boy goes to the blackboard. Balmani reveals that his mother always told him stories about the monastery, but during his explanations, he is interrupted by one of the students, who teases him. This makes the boy extremely sad, and later, while brushing his teeth, the young man is tormented by the troublemakers once again and tries to splash them with water to get them to stop bothering him. At dusk, Balmani grows tired of living in that place, and in order to take control of his life, he decides to leave, escaping from the orphanage. While walking through the area, the boy hears a gunshot nearby and walks toward the source of the sound to check what is happening. As soon as he arrives at the scene, Balmani comes across Samchai and Jenin in front of the body of the adult tiger, which was eliminated by a shot from the tycoon. Outraged by this attitude, Jenin reprimands his superior, but the man orders him not to interfere in his affairs and to take the predator's body to his vehicle. At the same time, Balmani sees the cub trapped in a cage, and as soon as the adults walk away, he runs to free the animal. However, before he can escape, the boy is spotted by Samchai, who shouts for his men to try to capture him, starting a chase. After managing to lose sight of the criminals, Balmani hides behind a fallen tree trunk, and realizing that he will not be able to find them, the tycoon gives up the chase. Furious, Samchai also orders Jenin to find out who the boy is, as he knows they may have been robbed by one of the children from the orphanage. In the morning, Balmani arrives at a small abandoned residence and uses the place as a makeshift shelter, allowing them to rest without worry. In the orphanage kitchen, while preparing some recipes, Jenin receives a call from Samchai, who asks if he has already found out who was responsible for the theft during the tiger hunt. Fearful, the man replies that he has not yet been able to find any clues about it, and the tycoon orders him to resolve the situation as soon as possible. Hours later, Balmani takes the little tigress to the edge of the forest and says goodbye to her, saying that he cannot guarantee her safety by her side, so she must return to her daily life. However, the cub refuses to be left alone, and excited to have a new travel companion, the young man uses a rope as a leash and sets off for his hometown with his friend. At the orphanage, Hannah and Ida find out about the adult tiger that lost its life, and to make sure that all the children at the orphanage are okay, they decide to take a headcount. Thanks to this, the pair notice that Balmani has disappeared, and ask all the orphans to help them find him. Upon discovering that the boy disappeared on the same night the cub was rescued, Jenin becomes concerned, and at the same time, Hannah decides to call the police. The next day, Balmani wakes up on the shore of a lake next to the tigress, and as soon as they continue their journey, he comes across a group of guards looking for them. To avoid being seen, the boy runs towards one of the rowboats and leaves the scene without being found by the authorities. Minutes later, Balmani ends up in the middle of a huge river current, and while trying to dodge a pile of sticks, he ends up turning the boat more than he should have and falls into the water. The boy quickly returns to the boat and continues his journey alongside his cub friend, who feels increasingly close to him and is named Mokti. Meanwhile, the members of the orphanage talk about Balmani's disappearance, and upon discovering that the young man is one of the victims of the earthquake that occurred some time ago, Jenin suggests that they check the city where the catastrophe occurred. Upon hearing this, Hannah agrees with the idea and decides to head there with her colleague. During their trip, Balmani comes across a girl washing clothes on the riverbank and runs to ask for her help, as they are very hungry. Frightened, the young woman tries to run away, but ends up twisting her ankle, causing her to fall to the ground. Trying to calm her down, Balmani promises that he will not harm her, and tells her that they are only looking for shelter and food to continue their journey. Realizing that the boy has no bad intentions, the young woman calms down and accepts the traveler's help so she can return to the village. The girl introduces herself as Beckney and takes her new friend to her nomadic village, where Balmani tells her that he is traveling with the cub after rescuing it from poachers. Noticing that Balmani has a good heart, one of the village elders feels relieved and allows him to stay with them. Minutes later, Beckney asks the boy to accompany her, as she wants to show him something, and after leaving Mokti in the village, the pair head into the forest. The girl then takes her friend to a huge waterfall, where they swim and have fun for a while. After that, the pair return to the village, and Balmani feeds Mokti milk from one of the goats. Beckney then reveals that she and her people are about to leave, but says she has one last warning before they go. The young woman explains that when she becomes an adult, Mokti will be a much more powerful animal and may end up attacking people, so Balmani must take her home as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Hannah and Jenin continue their journey towards the boy's hometown, and the man becomes increasingly concerned when he notices that Samchai is sending him several messages warning him about his delay. So, the employee decides to send Balmani's home address to the tycoon, who heads to the location. Without wasting any time, Jenin asks Hannah to look for the boy in the abandoned residence and lies, saying that he will search for him at the city bus station. In the middle of the road in the forest, Balmani gets a ride from a motorcyclist, allowing him to reach his hometown. The boy quickly goes to his old home, and as soon as he arrives, he is stunned by the destruction caused by the earthquake. Minutes later, while resting, Balmani hears a vehicle approaching, and when he looks out the window, he notices that Samchai has found him. Desperate, the boy asks Mokti to hide, but it's no use, and after subduing the young man, the tycoon captures the cub. Before leaving, Samchai orders him to remain silent about what happened, stating that he will return to eliminate him if he tells anyone. The criminals then leave the scene, and soon after, Hannah appears, relieved to have finally found Balmani. After giving the orphan some water and food, the woman asks what happened, and he replies that he found a tiger cub. However, Hannah does not believe him and asks him to accompany her so they can go to a safe place, but the boy is not bothered by this and says he will stay there. Determined to take care of Balmani, Hannah sits down next to him and explains that even though his mother is no longer alive, the young man is still connected to her, and they will always be together. In addition, the woman suggests that they spend the night at that residence and return to the orphanage at dawn. Balmani accepts the idea, and Hannah begins to comfort the boy while telling him the story of how she lost her mother in a car accident. Hours later, Samchai delivers Jenin's payment after capturing the cub again and says that from now on, his subordinate will be able to buy his long-dreamed-of motorcycle. Meanwhile, in the abandoned house, Balmani wakes up after a nightmare, and despite knowing how much Hannah cares about his safety, he decides to leave, and leaves the place without her hearing him. At dawn, the boy arrives at one of the other neighborhoods devastated by the earthquake and is excited to reunite with his old friends from the neighborhood, who remained living in that area even after the catastrophe. As soon as she wakes up and notices that Balmani is no longer there, Hannah decides to go look for him. Sometime later, as night falls, the boy talks to his friends about Mokti's capture, and at that moment, one of the young men remembers that the neighborhood is full of warehouses used by criminals. So, the group of orphans decides to head to one of the buildings, and as soon as they sneak into the place, they come across one of Samchai's henchmen, who is skinning the adult tiger. Soon after, Balmani sneaks through the place in search of Mokti, who is found alone in a cage near the magnate's bedroom, who has fallen asleep in his bed. Quickly, the boy saves his friend without making a sound, and while guarding the door, one of the children sees Jenin talking to one of the criminals. After rescuing Mokti, Balmani runs to meet up with the rest of his companions, but at that moment, one of them knocks a glass jar on the floor, waking Samchai. Noticing that the cub has been caught, the tycoon yells at his henchmen to catch the intruders, and quickly, the group goes outside. Soon after, one of the young men asks Balmani to hide while the rest of them distract the criminals. Thanks to this, Samchai is unable to find his target and begins to threaten Jenin, saying he will give him one last chance to resolve the situation. The next morning, Balmani meets Madhav, a neighbor, and noticing that the young man seems hungry, he decides to give him some of his food. During their conversation, the boy explains that he is heading north so that the little tiger can live in a safe place, far from any kind of threat. Upon hearing this, Madhav reveals that his village is also located in the same direction and says he can accompany Balmani on his journey. Far away, Hannah goes to a nearby police station, and after hearing the whole story about what is happening, the police officer says that they can revoke the woman's license to continue running the orphanage, since her irresponsibility caused her to lose the same child for the second time. This news leaves Hannah extremely worried, and when she looks at the mural in the room, she sees a photograph of the Tiger's Nest Monastery and decides to head there to see if Balmani is there. At the same time, Jenin tries to alert Samchai to the boy's possible location, but at that moment, he ends up bumping into one of the pedestrians. As a result, the man drops his cell phone on the ground, and curious to know who her colleague has been exchanging so many messages with, Hannah picks up the device. Realizing that Jenin has just sent an alert about Balmani's possible location to someone, the woman becomes furious and questions why he is doing this. Far away, Madhav takes his new friend to a spot on the road where he meets his uncle, who takes the pair north in his pickup truck. During the trip, the young man says he is part of a tribe of honey hunters and decides to take Balmani there so he can see the place. After traveling for some time, the young men say goodbye to the man and continue on their way along the forest trail. Meanwhile, Jenin explains to Hannah how he has been working alongside Samchai, and the woman is outraged by the choices he has made. Trying to calm her down, the man begs for forgiveness and says he will do anything to help fix the situation. Hannah then has an idea, and together, the orphanage employees go to an old friend's store, where they use the money Jenin received from Samchai to pay for a trip to the northern region. In the mountainous areas, Madhav finds his father working as a honey collector and is excited to reveal that he managed to sell all the products he had taken to the city. In addition, the young man introduces Balmani to his father and the other workers, who have fun watching Mokti playing on the floor. Sometime later, the pair arrive at the honey hunter's village, and after feeding the tigress and giving Balmani a new outfit, they set off for the monastery. However, during the walk, the boy begins to feel ill due to the altitude, and Madhav says it's time to stop and rest for a while. The pair then talk for a few minutes, and eventually, they continue their journey. At one point, Madhav explains the route Balmani must take to reach the tiger's nest, and before leaving, the orphan says goodbye to his friend. At the same time, Hannah arrives in the region by aircraft, and after landing, she meets her guide, who says they need to leave for the monastery immediately, as a storm is approaching. In the Great Mountains, Balmani continues his journey alongside Mokti, but as the minutes pass, the pair end up getting lost and are forced to stop in the middle of a heavy snowstorm. Despite feeling like he is freezing, the boy tries to keep the cub warm and manages to feed her some meat he had stored in his backpack. The problem is that the temperature is dropping, and suddenly, Balmani loses consciousness. Hours later, a group of men find the boy lost in the snow and quickly decide to rescue him, taking him to their village on one of their mounts. As soon as he regains consciousness and sees Mokti safe and sound by his side, Balmani is relieved, and with the help of the tribe members, the pair manage to recover their energy. The next day, the group takes the travelers a few miles toward the monastery, and after wishing them good luck, they leave. Balmani then continues his journey toward the tiger's nest, growing increasingly tired from having to control Mokti, who now has greater strength since she has grown a little. Irritated by the tigress's behavior, the boy decides to release her collar and orders her to leave, saying he can't take it anymore. This attitude confuses Mokti, and realizing that her friend no longer wants her around, the cub walks away from him. Now that he is alone, Balmani spends the night warming himself by a fire, and at dawn, he walks through the forest for a while longer. Suddenly, the boy begins to hear a chorus in the distance, and when he looks at the horizon, he sees the tiger's nest on one of the mountains in front of him. This discovery makes Balmani extremely excited, and at that moment, Mokti appears behind him, showing that she still wants to travel by his side. Realizing that they will be able to complete this journey together, the pair heads toward the monastery, but suddenly, they are surprised by Samchai, who orders the boy to hand over the tigress immediately. However, Balmani refuses to do so, and the tycoon draws his gun, stating that no one will miss him if he is eliminated. Despite the threats, the boy is not intimidated and shouts to intimidate the man. At the same time, Mokti enters a state of rage and leaps toward the criminal, who drops his gun. Quickly, Balmani kicks the gun away, and in order to immobilize his enemy, the tigress begins to bite Samchai's leg. In a rage, the criminal tries to free himself as he walks backwards, but this causes him to fall off the cliff and be eliminated by the fall. Witnessing this scene, Balmani is shocked, and soon after, Hannah appears and apologizes for not believing him. In addition, the woman tries to warn the boy that there is a dangerous hunter looking for him, but the young man claims that the man is no longer alive. Realizing that Balmani has managed to deal with all the dangers in an extremely courageous manner, Hannah is impressed and offers to accompany him to the monastery. Upon arriving at the site, Mokti runs into one of the temples, where she is greeted by several monks, who are excited to see her. Soon after, Balmani talks to one of the leaders and explains that his mother always told him stories about the guru of the tiger's nest, who faced all fears, dangers, and sorrows to achieve his goal. The monk then reveals that the boy was able to make this same journey, alongside Mokti, who from now on will be in a safer place than anywhere else in the world. However, the man explains that a tigress like her needs a family, and suggests that they take her to an adult tigress who recently had cubs. Upon hearing this idea, Balmani becomes excited, and after some time traveling, the group arrives at the feline's territory, who appears alongside her 2 cubs. So that his great friend can finally be free, the boy says goodbye to her, and Mokti begins to walk toward the animals. However, before leaving, the tigress runs back to her owner so she can receive one last hug before leaving. Emotionally, Balmani says he will miss his friend very much and removes the makeshift collar from her neck, asking her to enjoy her life from now on. That scene leaves Hannah and the other monks completely moved, and as they watch Mokti being accepted as the newest member of the tigress's family, they walk over to the boy. To console him, the monk says that despite the difficulties we have faced in the past, it is always possible to start over, and those words inspire Balmani. Sometime later, the children from the orphanage play in the garden, and while preparing dinner, Jenin decides to remove the poster of his dream motorcycle from the wall. After that, Hannah calls everyone to eat, and before going to the table, Balmani finishes hanging his poster of the story of the great guru of the tiger's nest. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.